I'm John Mercurio. Up next on Hotline TV, Chuck is found guilty of 4 out of 5 counts of jumping ship.
This despite John's 85 days in jail trying to protect me. Oh, that was very kind of you.
On the jailhouse
Almost
floor.
like the aspen when the aspen leaves
Turned, yes, yes.
We see parents who dream big, of honor students and artists. By supporting programs that help children learn, we help parents watch their dreams come true.
From the Watergate Building in Washington, this is Hotline TV. Now here are Hotline editors Chuck Todd and John Mercurio.
Hi everyone, I'm John Mercurio. A jury this week found Scooter Libby guilty on 4 counts of perjury and obstruction of justice, meaning he'll more than likely have to serve at least some time in jail in the CIA leak case. But the jurors didn't seem to be too happy about their verdict. They said they thought poor Libby was just a fall guy for the bigger fish left unfried. Sorry, Chuck Todd, what happens to those fish, if you will, who are now left unfried? Will they fry, Chuck Todd?
I think the first thing they're going to do is they better pardon Libby. I mean, that's fact. I mean, I think the jurors took so long. I'm going to read jurors' minds here. I think they took so long because they said, you know what, the guy's guilty and he shouldn't go to jail. And I think they were worried about sending this guy to jail because they figured, wait a minute, if we're going to send anybody to jail, why are we sending him? You know, it doesn't make sense that Scooter Libby's the guy that should be going to jail for any of this stuff. Frankly, I don't know if anybody should go to jail. Let somebody else, and I'm sure by saying that, everybody's going to say, oh, look, there goes another right-wing bias guy and that stuff. But it's like, wait a minute. Are we really going to say that Scooter Libby is guilty of playing politics? No question. Are we going to start jailing people that play politics?
Well, the problem for the White House right now is you have a very, very strong political argument against pardoning.
Yes.
A very, very strong, especially, delaying until after the 2008 election. But on a legal front, there's actually no way that they can't not pardon him. They have to pardon him because, think about it, I mean, if this White House doesn't pardon Scooter Libby, basically they're endorsing the verdict of this jury. That's right. Even though they've come out publicly and said that they disagree
and in fact,
with
it's bad government. It's actually bad government. If they don't pardon Scooter, it's bad staff management. They could have their own staff sitting there going, wait a minute, why am I I'm never going to put my neck out for these guys. I mean, in fact, and I'm just looking at a basic managerial front. If they don't pardon Scooter, what message does that send to the rest of the current staff?
What message does it send to Scooter Libby, who, I'm sure after he gets out of jail after 18 months, has plenty of book deals and could come out with quite
Look at the entire picture of the political week for the White House. Walter Reed,
not good.
This U.S. attorney thing, which apparently just keeps bubbling up. I'm not as fired up about the story as others are, but as part of the noise. And then the Libby verdict, all of a sudden you're like...
It feels like October 2005.
Yeah, here they go. It's just like a ridiculously bad time again. I mean, I'm sure Bush's rating's going to drop 3 or 4 points. It can't drop too much lower. He's already in that 35, 34 range, and he can't seem to get out of it. And every time you think he's going to get out of it, stuff like this drags out. But all 3 of these stories coming together this week, I think it's bad. It's going to go from bad to worse.
Look, and 2 out of 3 of the stories, I mean, the U.S. Attorney story not directly connected to the war in Iraq, but, the Walter Reed story directly tied to the war in Iraq, the Scooter Libby story directly tied to the war in Iraq. I mean, at some point you just almost have to, have the terrorists won? I mean, when they sort of sparked this, when they provoked, when this war in Iraq, when the president decided to go to war.
Didn't you get attacked by the DNC the last time you said something like that about the terrorists winning? But anyway, go ahead.
No, it wasn't me. It was Craig something. Not Craig Crawford.
Your headline news guys.
Headline news.
Response to your response,
but just it's so multifaceted the way the impact that this sort of war has had on the Bush administration politically.
And this is one where I think they have to do the right thing and just rip it off like a Band-Aid. It's going to suck. It's going to be politically bad. This Libby pardon. It's not going to be good. It's going to be politically bad. But you know what? It's a bad week. Do it now and move on.
All right, kids, the moment none of us has been looking forward to. Time for me to offer a heartfelt and extremely intoxicated farewell to my colleague and friend, Charles Todd, who I call Chuck, who's going away to that big peacock in the sky, or at least in that television screen. I'm not going to get all messy and emotional or bitter or spiteful. I'll save that all for the tell-all biography that I've been working on about Chuck with Kitty Kelly.
Jeez, and I am not going to die.
Well, you very well may. Look, let's be honest. I might die. Who knows? I think every time we leave each other, we should say goodbye in a way that respects each other and respects our friendship and the bond we have.
The Uber boss here, David Bradley.
Yes, indeed.
I think I'd be better off. I don't know if my obit can get better. I feel like I have. It's one of those things you feel like, boy, you know what? Maybe I'm better off just going to that big peacock in the sky, because
But you know
it's
what?
a pretty good obit I got going on right now. At least everybody's trying to do that. I assume it's some sort of sucking up. I don't know.
But that's the thing about you, Chuck Todd, is that your obit, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, your obituary will only get better and better and better. You will look one
You'll
day.
have a better lead?
You will look one day upon these
It's a good
Hotline
lead.
TV clips. Yeah, your obit will get better and better. You will look back on these Hotline TV clips as the nadir, the
Ralph
nadir,
Nadir?
if you will, the Ralph Nadir
Nadir.
of your life as you climb to Zenith. To
But
Zenith,
see,
Zenith
but let's look
television?
at a Ralph
Isn't
Nadir.
Zenith a television?
Yeah,
Isn't
but
that
this
an
is General
electronic?
Electric, please.
Okay,
General
sorry.
Electric, where I will
Sorry.
be getting half price appliances. That is true, actually.
And every Hotline TV viewer.
Every Hotline TV viewer, through me.
Call Chuck Todd.
Call me now, but those dishwashers.
Chuck.Todd@NBCUNI.com or whatever.
We're kidding, I think, a little bit on the GE stuff. I've enjoyed this. You are one of a kind.
I am
I'm
indeed.
sorry you got a haircut, because you were
No,
defined.
you're not.
You were defined. You've been defined by that thing. But this
I
is a
have
good
indeed.
thing. I think it shows that you've always saved the hair for me, and now that I'm leaving, you feel like a part of you is going away, and you've cut the hair.
Is this a twist off?
It's not a twist
Why
off.
isn't this a twist
Do you-
off?
Do you not drink the unnamed Mexican beer very often? Of course, it's not a twist off.
Come on, dude.
Don't
Can we
you
open
know
this up?
I can name a beer. You name a beer, and I'll tell you if it's a twist off or not.
Rolling Rock.
Twist off.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Um,
All right. It's not good television. But how do you not
that's
know?
very good
How do you
television.
not know? Every good beer drinker should know what's a twist off and what do you need for, because when you
I
go
gotta
into that
admit, I don't drink a lot
7-Eleven,
of Corona Light, ladies
when you
and
go
gentlemen.
into that 7-Eleven, you
Chuck
got to
Todd
know.
was a light beer drinker.
You got to know what
not I.
tools. You got to know what's. Hello, I'm on television now. Television adds 10 pounds. There's no more regular beer for me. It's all light.
All right, we probably have about 2 viewers left, and there
Yeah.
are other people who want to say goodbye to Chuck Todd, so I will just do this. I will
All
say
right.
thank you very much.
Thank you, boss. It's
for
been a
all
pleasure.
of the work and all of the friendship.
It's been a pleasure. Well,
And
the friendship
will continue.
Of course it will.
And so will the work, frankly.
The NBC National Journal Partnership. It's like this. Today, I get to. It's sort of like you're living your life over. This is your life. I've got the guy who got me into politics and made me understand it all, or makes me think the way
guy-
I think.
The guy who drug you into all
Who
this?
drug me into this, Doug Bailey, who, unbeknownst to everybody, when I was hired, I was related to the editor-in-chief at the time, and he wanted to keep that from you.
If
and
I'd known it, you would never have gotten here, and
Because
you
those
never
tough
would have been
nepotism-
going on to greater things.
Those tough nepotism laws that the American Political Network had at the time, the APN. So, all right, I was here from when we went from, we actually had WordPerfect 5.0. I wasn't in the days of when you hand wrote spotlights and made somebody else put them on, and now we're in the internet.
Well,
What will the hotline?
1987, that's the way it started. That Ron Rosenbluth and I, well, Rosenbluth would use a computer. I would use a pencil
A
and
yellow
pad
pad.
and
Blue
write
marker.
some out, and somebody else would have to type them up because I couldn't type.
All right, let's not look at the past hotline. What's the hotline at this hotline turns 20 this year. Hotline at 25. How much printed word will there be? How much video? Hotline at 30. What's the hotline at 30 going to look like?
Well, I think there's always going to be a print publication, but we're in the YouTube world, and the hotline is going to have to be a video publication.
And it's going to cover the coverage of video. I mean, you think it's going to
Sure.
that it's going to sit there and there's going to be a video hotline every day of sort of today on the campaign
Sure.
trail, and you're going to have to get all this video, this sourcing video from. We're already coming up with a new concept here, apparently on the spot of what we should be doing at Hotline now, but which is all this video every day, and you'll be able to see yesterday and today in politics just by watching it 5-minute click on your.
I mean, I know you don't want to go back into the old days, but the fact of the matter is that the technology has evolved so rapidly, and every 2 years it's a little different than it was 2 years before, so that if you fast forward 4 years or 6 years or 8 years, I think you just have to assume that a whole new world of technology is going to take over, just as YouTube seems to have taken over the internet as it is today. And that means that the hotline has to evolve with it. It is going to be much more visual, although I do believe there will always have to be the printed publication.
All right, let's go to the printed part for a minute. When the hotline started, I had a Rolodex of people that I would call at night to try to get a fax over clips. And these newspapers...
They called you back?
They would, some of them. And these
Did
newspapers...
they call you back because you were Chuck Todd or because you were the Hotline?
I was the Hotline, and it was
Now
not
they
it
call
was
you
not
back
sort of
because you're
it
Chuck
was, it
Todd.
was not sort of sex line. My favorite part was the abortion report, and we would get calls asking if this was the place to come to take care of
The
that
abortion
business.
hotline.
Yeah. So, but there were these weird people at newspapers called political editors. At newspapers, you actually called up a newspaper, the San Jose Mercury News or the Miami Herald, and they had a position called a political editor. Well, fast forward 15 years, there are no longer political editors. I can name 2, I think, in the entire newspaper industry that still has political editor, the Washington Post and the New York Times. Not a single other newspaper, to my knowledge, has what was what every newspaper had just 15 years ago. So here we are, there's more interest in politics than ever before, more people are participating, more people are doing YouTubes, and less people are covering it.
Not necessarily less coverage.
Right, but explain. I don't understand. I mean, it's sort of like I get a little, how does the Hotline evolve in a time when there is less diversity in coverage of politics?
Yeah, but the Hotline, through all of its 20 years, has in fact expanded the diversity that it's able to bring together into one publication. It has been able to reach out further and further and further because of the technology tools that allow you to sort of search for words and names every morning and collect stuff from Phoenix and Joplin and everywhere.
No, I mean, I think David Yepsen became a household name because of the Hotline. Carl Cameron has his job
Right.
at Fox News because of the Hotline. I
Right.
think he himself would admit it when he was at WMUR and he faxes transcripts to us. And there are other Lee Bandy at the side where became sort of semi-national household names in the Beltway.
If it is true, and I think most elections it is true. I'm not sure that in 2008 it'll be true, but in most elections it will always be true that all politics or most politics is local. Therefore, the impact of various issues differs from one locality to the next. The issues, the candidates differ. Therefore, coverage of them, there will still be a need for a hotline to reach out for all of that.
But to me, the big challenge is there isn't one place to go locally anymore. It used to be, boy, the Miami Herald covered South Florida and the state of Florida
No question.
politically better than anybody in the state.
No
They're
question.
horrible at it now, not because they don't have the bodies. However, johnmartinez.blogspot.com
Right.
has a great site, and the Safety Review that we use as our Florida affiliate has a great site that covers politics. And locally, so the hotline has to start doing that.
So
And
the hotline in the future will have to do what the hotline in the past has done. That is, reach out for all the coverage, including the bloggers, including anything that's on the net.
questionable
and-
integrity in some of these
and-
places.
I understand. And sift through it, as you did with the print press. Sift through it, pick out the stuff that's important and reliable, and report it. And if you do that, it will be just as important. The hotline will be just as important, if not more important, in the future than it has been in the past, because there'll be more and more and more
And
resources.
that's where I was going to get our hotline plug in. And the fact is, it's bigger. It's more important now because there are too many sources.
No question.
People don't have time to read everything, and they desperately need a filter. And if the hotline's not that filter, the worry is, do you want to have a mainstream publication like the New York Times serve as that filter? And that's not healthy.
But will the hotline have the quality in the future that it has had while you've been its
Well,
editor?
Of course, because somebody passed it along to me. There was Bob Balkin, and before him there was Doug Bailey, and before and before me there was Craig Crawford, and after me there will be others. It never ends. You know that. It's a cycle of life.
It is a good idea. It will continue. It will be a central meeting point for everybody in politics. But the quality depends upon people like you, who brought to it not just a political insight, but great integrity and skill. in what you did.
You're very kind to do that. It was also just fun.
Yeah, well,
It was a lot of fun, and I owe everything to you. You should know that. So I don't. I don't like to get mushy and all that stuff. And
oh, please, come on.
but
No.
I know. See, I adopted that earlier in the show, and that's who I learned this from. Was him. But I don't. It's.
Well, you've been-
I think about politics the way I think about it is I think, what would Doug Bailey think with a story like this?
Oh,
because you
wow.
don't think conventionally. Sometimes that's crazy. Most of the time, it's what makes a great hotline.
Be very careful.
I know that.
Be very careful.
Well, I thank you.
I do appreciate those kind words, but the fact of the matter is that the hotline at any given point is its capacity to do what it does is intimately related to the skill and insight and devotion and excitement of the people who produce it and the people who run it.
Well,
and it's very much to your credit.
You created that environment. I just tried to pass
Thank
it
you.
on.
Haven't you had enough of this?
We have to end this thing because we have more guests. You know, it's kind of like Johnny's last show.
You have more
I
guests?
have more guests. Apparently, there's one more guest that's coming aboard. So,
Okay.
thanks, Doug.
Thank you, my friend. Good luck to you.
Thank you, sir. Finally, today we're joined by my former colleague, Hotline editor in his own right, and my very good friend, Vaughn Ververs. Vaughn.
You have to put the garish in there, don't you?
I do. It's just sort of, I'm going to hold that against you. You and I started a week apart. People don't know this. You know, I came from the Harkin campaign. You came from the Buchanan campaign. We're both just a bunch of out of work, out of luck, hungry. We had no idea what the hell we were
We
getting
were
into.
fair and balanced way before Fox
Before
was
it
even on the scene.
Before it was cool. Of course, I became more conservative. You became more liberal, and nobody knows exactly where we stand anymore, which is this is the beauty of network. But it was, I mean, you know, it was a nutty. We went through some nutty experiences.
One of my favorite experiences. Look,
I was going to say one being late to your wedding. That was one of my favorite experiences.
well, that wasn't just you. That was the entire Hotline gang that came up to
We were your only guests.
to Imlington, Pennsylvania. You were the groom's side.
We were the groom's
that's for
side,
sure.
and we come in late. It was a nice.
Well, it was the
moment.
keg of beer in the back of the van. I think that probably contributed to that.
It wasn't cake, we had ponies. It was pony kegs. It was a whole thing. Like years ago, Mr. Standard is a practices guy.
You know, a lot of people, you know, we're so old now. We can remember times where there weren't cell phones, there wasn't an internet, there wasn't. Still,
We had
some of my
modems.
fondest memories are calling Ray Bell at the Dallas Morning News every single night and getting his World War II stories as we're begging him to send us Texas Senate clips.
And then there was and I'm not going to name the senator because we have friends of that senator, but there was the senator who was dying for a very long time, and of course the hotline always got excited, unfortunately, about deaths, politicians dying, because it meant special elections. And back in the day, before presidential elections truly were 4-year-long campaigns, we lived
There
and
was something
died.
we had to have something to
We
cover.
needed special elections, and so deaths of senators and congressmen were a big deal, and we would get all over those local papers. And literally, we had this one newspaper who sent us the obit before the guy died. He said, "Look, we've had this obit written for 6 months. You have it. He's circling the drain.
Circling the drain. Thus was born.
But I'm not mentioning who that is because we know some people connected to that family, and I don't want to hurt their feelings. But you know, those were the days.
Those were days when we were covering the House Post Office scandal. I mean, those were days when we really were
Paul
stressed.
Rodriguez of the Washington Times, when he was winning Pulitzers. That's
He did not
scary.
win the Pulitzer.
He must have. He
Oh,
took
I
down
can't
Rosti.
believe-
That
I
was
can't
some-
believe that.
That was a big deal. They were asking earlier at a goodbye staff meeting what was your most memorable one, and frankly, it's always going to be 9/11 week. You know, fortunately, unfortunately, I don't know. It was the moment that I thought that we are journalists. I didn't know if we were journalists sometimes. I used to think, what are we? The hotline's at this, the that. I was like, no. We're at the end of the day, we are a bunch of journalists just wanting to cover the big story, and everybody here in their own way wanted to do it.
Yeah,
It was a
that
nice moment.
was absolutely
It was a proud moment. I don't
you
know how else to call it.
For me, I mean, 9/11 was certainly scary because we could look outside our
We're
window
watching
and
it
watch
right
the
out here.
Pentagon burn.
Yeah.
But you know, for me, the most memorable times will always be that period after 2000 election when we were in that recount and thinking all along that we'd seen so many things
So
in
we've
our
seen it
careers
all.
here at the Hotline. We've saw this takeover
Impeachment.
of Congress and impeachment of a
Republicans, that's
president.
he took over Congress.
Right, and we
Mario
thought-
Cuomo actually lost an election.
We thought, what else could we see? And then that came along, and that was just, I mean, we were so burnt out and tired, but we had to cover that thing all the way through. That was the most trying time, I think.
It was, and what was even harder to deal with was our mentor, Doug Bailey, coming in, who had written a book about this very scenario of faithless electors. And he was just all fired up about the faithless electors, and I think probably that day, but our coverage, I felt like we led the pack that day. I think the best legacy of the hotline is how many imitators we have. And
Yes.
I mean that in a good way. The more imitators we've had, the better it's been for us because we have people that work very hard, and they're not just cut and paste Googling monkeys.
Right.
These are people that are smart, They know politics. They know politics better than 95% of the journalists in this town, and they produce an incredible product that everybody wishes they were a part of.
Well, one of the mistakes that people have always made who want to try to criticize what we've done here at the Hotline is to call us something like a clipping service with a brain, which one of our former colleagues actually did call us.
But it wasn't a bad thing to say. I used to like
But
that
people
one.
I think people who looked at it, the Hotline that way, made a big mistake
they didn't
because we were
understand it.
so much more than that. The
didn't
Hotline's
understand it.
always been so much more than that. Thanks to Doug Daly, who you had on the show earlier today.
I know. Most embarrassing moment you think that I'm not remembering for myself?
Most embarrassing moment.
I'll let you, not a low moment, but a moment where you're just like, oof. The good news is you can't remember any.
I can't remember
that's
any
nice.
really embarrassing moments.
That's nice.
The
I remember
most
getting a fight at a softball game for calling balls and strikes. I had to ump.
I used to
The
dread.
guys at Julio's, they got mad.
I used to dread the 10 minutes after deadline because that's when, if you were going to get a complaint call, it was going to come within 10 minutes of the time the document went up, or else you weren't going to get one. So that was always sort of the walk on eggshells moment. But I can't remember any time being embarrassed of anything that we did at the Hotline, or
What's
just
amazing,
had a
we
lot
used
of
to do
fun.
things that we always felt like was pushing the line and all this stuff. And man, it is like
There's no
broadcast.
more line anymore.
And we're like nowhere near the line anymore the way everybody else does it. And
Still pretty edgy.
but it's fun edgy. It's all about having fun.
Hillary has
Sometimes
dick
it's
sweat. That's pretty edgy. That
all right.
continues to be pretty edgy.
There's a funnier way to do that. There's a funnier way to do that. CBS, how's it treating you?
CBS is, you're going to find out what broadcast news
Yeah.
is all about very
Yeah.
shortly, my
Yeah.
friend.
Where do I have to find CBS? Do I have to look down? Is that how do I look down in the? How do I do that? I look down in the ratings, or what? Do you have 4 viewers or 5 viewers on the thing?
Well, Bob Schieffer has been always fond of making the joke that their ratings went up, but he thinks that's just people who died while their TV sets were on. He's made that joke publicly, by the
It's
way.
pretty good.
Well, look, nobody's television news is a hurting business, just like newspapers are hurting
I'll
business.
say this. I during my interview process, one of the things I said, and I'm curious what you think, I said about what NBC News philosophy should be about news is that NBC should not be covering breaking news anymore. That NBC's job is to filter. It is a filter. And I know that some people don't like hearing that, but the fact is there's so many sources out there. NBC's job is to explain it better, smarter, fair, obviously, but that let other people be in the business of breaking news. NBC has a lot of smart people. Let them analyze
Well,
it.
I do think
Let
I
it be a
think you're
filter.
touching on what's going to be the new wave in media, whether it's at a website or broadcast, is originality, authority, and really good reporting and really good analysis. You can go to any website today. Almost, you can watch any of the 3 broadcast news at this point in time. You're going to see the same stories everywhere you go.
And I'm excited that actually we're going away from that. What's funny is I think you're doing a similar job at CBS News and what I'm supposedly going to be doing at NBC News. And I think you and I wouldn't have liked these jobs 5 or 6 years ago.
I think
and
you're right.
now, because they're coming to what we believe it's sort of, no, it's not about just regurgitating the news. It's actually about explaining why it matters.
I always tell people, especially people like the people we hired here at the Hotline, always like to tell them that, the Hotline was the internet before the internet even existed. I mean, we used to be dialed up on
We were
bulletin
Googles.
boards from
We
places.
were Google before there was Google.
On computer
Political
modems,
Google.
and people didn't even know what those were at that point in time. But I think the point of that is that we've been involved in something that's really cutting edge, and I think we're in a uniquely qualified place to take
like
it forward.
I think I'm better off just dropping dead now because the obit's pretty good. I don't mean to sound so morbid about it, but my God, it's pretty good obit right now. So I'm good. You want to
Do you
we
get
need to
to
go
take
Thelma
the
and
heads?
Louise? Should we go Thelma and Louise on?
Do you get to take the heads with you?
All right. Remember that? Remember what that was? You Hotline TV co-founder.
Yeah.
It's a 2-minute warning. Vaughn, I think you remember how this goes.
You never forget Chuck, ever.
So David Beckham, great athlete or greatest athlete? I'm embarrassed.
David who?
Exactly.
Your next novel, Quit Digging Your Grave with Free Brownies and Bagels from from Hotline to Higher Ground.
Definitely quit digging your grave with Rosita's help.
I gotta
love
tell
Rosita.
you.
How much do you miss Rosita?
I miss her a lot.
Oh, I'm going to miss
Especially
her a lot.
at
I'm going to have to
9
pay
o'clock.
for my coffee.
Yeah, believe me.
There's
it
an
takes
NBC commissary.
It's a bigger chunk than you think.
2.0. Hotline TV, how drunk were we when you thought of this idea?
Were we ever that sober? There's the buzzer. You'll miss that sound, Chuck.
I know. I'm sure it will. Thanks to Vaughn for walking me through this final show. It kind of feels like, a little...
Old home week.
A little bit, and, you're sort of my Bette Midler. You know, you are the wind. He needs my wind.
Johnny, you're too much.
Thanks for watching Hotline TV.
Peace out. See ya.